Good afternoon, everyone. It's a natural question, and it's a question we've all had because we have two big problems in real estate now. We have a big problem with commercial real estate. Office buildings are having trouble making money because so many companies are work from home and they're canceling their leases or they're reducing office space. Yet in downtown areas, the cost of living is simply unaffordable for many of the people living there. So why not convert these big office buildings into apartments, especially if we can do it for affordable housing for lower income people? And the reason is that it's really, really complicated and really expensive. Remember the last visit that you took to a high-rise office building? You went to have a meeting in a downtown office. And it's a big office and there were windows along the side. And you go to a private office inside the main one. The doors of that office were glass, maybe, or perhaps thin walls in between that office and the next one. And you can even hear the conversation that's taking place in the office next door. And you realize right away that the person you're meeting with is important because he has a window. He has an office that looks over the street. And the interior offices, they don't have windows. Most of the other employees don't have a window office at all. Then they offer you a cup of coffee or a Coke. They made it in the kitchen, or they got a Coke from the refrigerator. But they didn't make you a pizza or a plate of barbecue ribs. If you want real food, you got to go to the restaurant down the street. Later during the meeting, you go use the bathroom, which is down the hall and shared by all the other offices that are on the floor. So right away, we can see all kinds of problems if we want to just turn that space into a group of apartments. Apartments need windows and natural sunlight. Otherwise, they feel like a cave. Each apartment needs its own kitchen, which requires separate electrical outlets and vents in the ceiling so that you can get smoke and cooking smells out of the building. Plumbing is a huge and costly problem here too. Each apartment needs sinks and showers and toilets. So each apartment needs water lines coming in and sewer lines going out. All the plumbing and sewer in your office building are clustered near the core of the building, but now you need plumbing and sewer lines running all over it. Apartments also require some privacy, which means thicker walls in between them. Thicker walls are heavier, and those add to the structural weight of the building, floor by floor. All that said, if you are a reader of Time magazine, you'll be encouraged by this headline here. It seems like there is a big trend underway to turn downtown office buildings into apartments. But if we dig deeper, that is just really hard to do. Here's a feature by Bloomberg, and here's another good take by CNN. And they make a good point about how an office building with a lot of empty space doesn't mean very much. They use Chicago as an example. If a building is only 50% leased, it's probably losing money. But it still means that 50% of the space is being used as office space. What are you going to do with the commercial tenants that are there now? They have legal leases. These are places of business for these companies. If the leases are all going to expire this year or next, then it's possible to consider. But what if these commercial leases will run for another 5 years or longer? Let's go through this Wall Street Journal piece here, which does some good analysis for us on these problems. First, consider where the building conversions will make the most sense. The best buildings to turn into apartments are older buildings, but not too old. They're also lower quality buildings, not Class A, which is top quality, but they need to be what we call Class B or Class C. They need to be mostly empty, much more than 50% empty, or much less than 50% full. And they need to have small floors. And when we go through the inventory of commercial properties in the United States that meet these criteria, the percentage is already under 1% of the office space in our biggest cities. Then you have the return on investment problem. Apartment leases are falling, just slightly, but they are falling. And construction loans, these are the bank financing costs to do construction work. They're much more expensive today than just 2 years ago. Now the article gets into the conversion work that's actually required. They mention, again, the major interior demolition work. Lots of stuff needs to be knocked out completely and rebuilt from scratch for plumbing and sewer and electrical systems. And then there's the problem of getting workers and materials in and out of busy downtown areas. Moody's is a credit analysis company, and they analyze a lot of the loans and the bonds used in construction work. Moody's is more negative than almost anyone else on these questions and says that apartments to offices are a fringe, very small percentage of the market. It will simply not happen in a major way. They looked at New York City and studied over 1,000 buildings in New York and concluded that only 3% of them would be potentially viable as conversions. And most of these are Class B or Class C buildings, lower quality, older buildings. They do agree that remote work is causing big problems in CRE, commercial real estate. But that doesn't move the needle very much to investors. The first step of a process to turn the space into apartments is to buy an office building. And remember, they're looking at New York, where apartment rents are the highest in the country. And there is an office vacancy problem in New York, but the numbers just don't work for most of their offices there. The developer of an apartment housing needs to find offices with rents less than $55 per square foot per year and a vacancy rate of at least 30%. And when those two filters are applied, only 0.7% of New York's Class A and only 6% of Class B and C make the cut. Those are the first filters that they used. Then the numbers get worse for Moody's. The buildings need to be a certain size and shape, what they describe as floor plate. The worst shape of a building would be a square, for example. Their analysis is that almost all the buildings suitable for conversion have a particular shape, a certain distribution of windows to apartment depth, etc. And the best buildings have an average square floor plate size of 14,000 square feet. 14,000 square feet is 1,300 square meters. And if you apply that filter to the previous two and survey across New York City, now we're down to only 35. 35 buildings in the entire city can be considered for conversions from offices to apartments. Moody's comes to the same conclusion here that the Wall Street Journal does, along with most of the financial publications. When you work out the money and the tremendous time and capital involved in the conversions, it simply cannot work for most buildings in most places. The last sentence here in the Moody's piece does seem to qualify that conclusion a bit and suggests that in other places the numbers might work out differently. So we looked into other places outside New York, and when we run the numbers in other cities, they come out the same. A very small number of buildings in Denver, Colorado, for example, are good candidates for conversions. In California, the conversions from commercial to residential are usually just torn down. They're razed completely and built all over again. And outside the US and Canada, they've got the same problems there. The best conclusion for us then too is that very few buildings in very few cities are good candidates on a construction engineering basis to even consider the idea at all. And even only then, if we can buy the properties at a great price, carefully manage the cost of construction and financing, and then hope the apartment rents stay high enough for long enough to get our investments back. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Be good.